Hey everyone. Have you ever thought about how little of our brain activity is actually conscious?
It is wild when you really think about it.
Yeah, it's something like what, 3 to 5%, right? That's
Hmm.
happening at the conscious level.
Tiny sliver. Yeah,
Yeah, so that means there's this whole like 95 to 97% of our brain activity happening below the surface,
that's right. The
the
subconscious.
subconscious, and that's what this deep dive is all about. How the subconscious is really running the show for so much of our lives.
And what we can do with that information.
Exactly, because understanding how the subconscious works can really be a game changer when it comes to personal growth and achieving your goals.
It's not just theoretical. This is really practical stuff backed by science that you can use to actually see those changes you're looking for.
Totally. So we're
Yeah.
going to take a deep dive into the brain,
Mm.
look at how it works, and introduce you to these mental tools called INNERCISE that you can actually use to make changes in your life.
Innercise. Yeah, it's like exercise, but for your brain.
Right. And we'll also talk about those common obstacles that tend to get in our way, like fear and limiting beliefs.
And how to overcome them.
Exactly. And how to break those bad habits and build new ones that actually serve us.
Habits are so powerful.
They really are. And we'll also cover the impact of stress, the importance of goal setting, and even peek into the future of where our understanding of the
Right.
brain might be headed.
It's pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah. So all this is based on a collection of really insightful ideas, all about unlocking the hidden potential of your brain.
Yeah, think of it like a cheat sheet to understanding your brain.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So let's start by just appreciating the sheer potential of the human brain.
Our brains are
It's
incredible.
mind-boggling when you think about it. Like the brains of Fortune, 500 CEOs, successful entrepreneurs, even historical figures, they're all made of essentially the same stuff.
Same basic components. Yeah, scientists even refer to it as a consistent molecular architecture. So your brain, my brain, it's the same basic hardware.
So why then is there such a gap between that potential and what we actually achieve?
That is the big question, isn't it? I mean, we all have goals, aspirations, right? Things we want to accomplish, ways we want to grow, but consistently taking action and staying the course, that's the challenge.
Totally, because it's so easy to start out super motivated, like you're going to conquer the world.
Right, all those good brain chemicals are flowing, you're feeling it.
But then life happens, you get busy, you face some setbacks, and before you know it, you're right back in the same old routine.
Back to square one.
Yeah, or you start strong with something new, like a fitness plan, you're all in, and then that initial enthusiasm just fades.
And you're back where you started.
Yep. And this is where the idea of living on autopilot comes in.
Autopilot, yeah.
Like all those automatic responses, we have our instincts, those ingrained ways of thinking, feeling, and acting that help us get through the day,
Hmm.
keep us safe, keep us functioning.
Right, our brains are wired for efficiency, and a lot of that happens on this subconscious level.
And it makes sense from an evolutionary perspective, but the problem is that a big chunk of our lives is running on these automatic settings.
Like a program running in the background.
Exactly. And a lot of times these programs are running these habits are operating completely outside of our awareness.
And that's why we can find ourselves getting stuck in these patterns, getting the same unwanted results over and over.
Yeah, because when we're consistently thinking, feeling, and acting in the same way, we tend to create the same experiences, even if those experiences aren't serving us.
We're creatures of habit, and those habits can really dictate the course of our lives.
Exactly. And we like to think that we're in control, right? That our conscious mind is calling all the shots.
Yeah, we like to think we're rational beings making deliberate choices.
But it turns out that our conscious awareness is actually just the tip of the iceberg.
That's a great analogy, the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, that vast submerged part, the 95 to 97% operating beneath the surface, that's the subconscious.
And that's where the real power lies.
Exactly. So let's talk about how all this works together, this idea of neural coherence versus neural dissonance.
Okay, so imagine your brain like a complex orchestra.
I like it.
So you've got all these different sections, the strings, the brass, the woodwinds, the percussion. And when they're all playing together in harmony, that's when you create beautiful music, right?
Makes sense.
Well, your brain is kind of like that when all the different parts, your thoughts, your emotions, your beliefs are aligned and working together smoothly. That's what we call neural coherence.
So it's like the brain's optimal state where everything is functioning as it should.
Right. It's a state of safety and efficiency where things just feel right.
And what happens when things are out of sync?
Well, that's when we experience neural dissonance. It's like the orchestra is out of tune, instruments are clashing, the rhythm is off.
And that creates a sense of internal friction.
Exactly. It leads to negative states within us.
So what are some signs that someone might be experiencing this neural dissonance?
Well, you might notice things like disorganized thinking. Your thoughts are all over the place.
Yeah, like you can't focus.
Right, and maybe you experience mood swings, feeling up one minute and down the next.
Oh, yeah, those are the worst.
And feeling overwhelmed, like you're constantly juggling too many things.
And you can't keep up.
Exactly. And then there's procrastination, putting things off even though you should be doing them.
Oh, yeah, I know that one well.
And then you might also notice low energy levels, a lack of motivation, self-doubt, worry, and stress.
And even fear and anxiety.
Right. Those are all signs that there's some internal friction going on, that your brain isn't quite in that state of coherence.
So it's like all these things that we might think of as separate problems are actually interconnected.
They're all symptoms of that underlying neural dissonance.
So then what about neural coherence? What are the signs that someone's brain is in that optimal state?
Well, when your brain is in coherence, you're more likely to experience that flow state, where everything just clicks.
Yeah, like you're in the zone.
Exactly. And you're able to perform at your best. You're more productive. Your more creative ideas come
You
easily.
just feel good.
Right. You feel calm and relaxed. You're more resilient to stress. You have more clarity and focus.
And your thoughts are more organized.
Exactly. And you also experience greater well-being, a sense of inner peace and contentment.
That sounds pretty ideal.
It is. And the good news is that we can actually train our brains to move towards this state of coherence.
So we can actually change our brain.
Absolutely, thanks to neuroplasticity.
Neuroplasticity, that's the brain's ability to change and adapt throughout our lives.
Right. Our brains are not fixed. They're constantly rewiring themselves based on our experiences and our actions.
Which means we have the power to influence that rewiring.
That's right. We can consciously direct our brains towards greater coherence.
And that's where INNERCISE comes in.
INNERCISE, yeah. It's like a set of mental exercises specifically designed for personal transformation.
Think of it like cross-training for your brain.
Love that. Yeah, so you're strengthening those neural pathways that support well-being and success.
And what's great about INNERCISE is that it's something you can do anywhere, anytime.
No gym membership required.
Right. And you can apply these techniques to pretty much any area of your life where you want to see change.
Whether it's your career, your relationships, your health, your finances, you name it.
So how does intentional change through INNERCISE actually work?
Well, there are three key elements: awareness, intention, and action.
Okay, break that down for me.
So awareness is about noticing your current thoughts, feelings, and actions without judgment.
Just observing what's happening.
Exactly. And then intention is consciously choosing how you want to think, feel, and act moving forward.
So you're setting an intention for change.
Right. And then action is putting that intention into practice, actually doing things differently to create new neural pathways.
So it's not just about thinking positive thoughts, it's about taking action.
Exactly. Action is key.
And there are specific neuromuscles that we can strengthen through INNERCISE.
Yeah, think of them like mental abilities that you can develop.
Like what?
Well, there's creativity, visualization, confidence, willpower, attitude, gratitude, self-talk.
So these aren't just fixed traits we're born with, we can actually train them.
You got it.
So let's talk about becoming more thoughtful in our daily lives.
This is huge.
Yeah, because we're so used to just reacting impulsively.
Right. Our brains are wired for that fight or flight response.
But pausing before we react can make such a big difference.
It gives us that space to make a conscious choice.
Instead of just letting our autopilot take over.
Exactly. So think about those moments where you're tempted to reach for that unhealthy snack or make that impulse buy.
Yeah, I've been there.
By simply pausing for a moment, we can interrupt that automatic response and make a more intentional choice.
Right. And the first step is becoming aware of what triggers those automatic reactions for us.
What are those cues that set us off?
Once we know what they are, we can start to consciously choose a different response.
And there's a simple INNERCISE you can try for this.
Tell me about it.
So set a gentle alarm on your phone or computer to go off every hour or so.
Okay.
And when you hear that alarm, just take a few moments to become present.
Like a mini meditation.
Exactly. Just notice your thoughts and feelings without judging them. And then refocus your intention on what you want to be doing or how you want to be feeling in the next hour.
I like that it's like a little mental reset.
Yeah, exactly.
Now let's talk about goals.
Goals. Yeah, everyone loves setting goals, right?
But there's this misconception that achieving goals is just a straight line. You
Right.
set a goal, you take action, and boom, you succeed.
If only it were that easy.
Right. The reality is that it's way more complex than that.
There are going to be obstacles, setbacks, challenges along the way.
And how we navigate those challenges, that's what really determines our success.
That's where the growth happens.
And often the biggest obstacle isn't a lack of knowledge.
Right. We often know what we should be doing.
But actually doing it consistently, that's the hard part.
The process of change itself can be challenging.
So let's talk about some of the common obstacles that get in the way.
Okay, let's start with fear.
Fear, yeah.
Our brains are hardwired to keep us safe.
It's a survival mechanism.
Right, and a key part of that is the amygdala, this little almond-shaped structure in our brain that's constantly scanning for threats.
So even as we're just sitting here talking,
Our amygdala is on high alert.
looking for danger.
Exactly, and the thing is, it can't always distinguish between real threats and imagined threats.
So we can get triggered by our own thoughts.
Right, like that classic example of being on a plane and thinking, what if we crash?
Oh yeah, I've definitely had that thought.
Statistically, the chances of being in a plane crash are incredibly low.
But our brains don't always care about statistics.
Right, our fear system can overreact.
And those fears can really hold us back from living our full lives.
Absolutely. They can keep us stuck in jobs. We hate relationships that aren't serving us and prevent us from pursuing our dreams.
Because the fear of the unknown feels too overwhelming.
Exactly. And Dr. Srini Pillai has actually identified over 25 different types of fears that can throw us off track.
Wow, 25, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's like a whole fear catalog.
So fear is a big one, but what about limiting beliefs?
Limiting beliefs.
Mm.
Yeah, these are those deeply ingrained thought patterns that restrict how we see ourselves in the world.
Like those little voices in our heads that tell us we're not good enough or we can't do something.
Right. And those beliefs often operate on a subconscious level, so we might not even be aware of them.
But they can have a huge impact on our lives.
They can sabotage our success and keep us playing small.
So it's important to become aware of these beliefs and challenge them.
Absolutely.
And then there's the challenge of a negative mindset.
Yeah, negativity bias.
It's like our brains are wired to focus on the negative.
Well, it makes sense from an evolutionary perspective. Back in the day when we were constantly facing real dangers like predators and starvation, it was important for our survival to be hyper aware of potential threats.
Right, so negativity kept us safe.
Exactly. But the problem is that our brains haven't quite caught up to modern times.
So we're still scanning for danger even when there isn't any,
Right. And we tend to dwell on the negative more than the positive.
which can lead to anxiety, worry, stress.
And a whole host of other problems.
So it's like we need to retrain our brains to focus on the positive.
Exactly. We need to cultivate a more optimistic outlook.
And the good news is that we can do that.
Absolutely. Our brains are incredibly adaptable.
So it's not like we're stuck with this negativity bias.
Not at all.
We can actually shift our mindset.
And transform those obstacles into opportunities.
Yeah, because those limiting beliefs, they can become empowering stories that propel us forward.
And stress, which we often view as a negative, can actually be a catalyst for growth and resilience.
And those bad habits, we can replace them with new routines that support our goals.
It's all about rewiring our brains.
Exactly. And we heard an inspiring example earlier about someone who was feeling trapped by financial limitations.
Yeah, they felt completely stuck.
But through dedicated effort and INNERCISE techniques, they were able to release their emotional pain and those limiting beliefs about their financial capabilities.
And they were able to create a new reality for themselves.
That's so powerful.
It is.
So let's dive deeper into understanding and changing habits.
Habits, yeah.
Because habits, whether they're good or bad, they're incredibly powerful.
They really are. They shape our lives in so many ways.
And that's because they become ingrained neural pathways in our brain.
Like well-worn grooves.
Yeah. So positive habits can automate helpful behaviors.
Like brushing our teeth or exercising regularly.
Right. But those unhelpful habits, they can really hold us back.
They can drain our energy, sabotage our success, and impact our well-being.
So how do habits actually work?
Well, it's through something called the habit loop.
The habit loop.
Okay, so there are 3 stages to this loop: a cue, a routine, and a reward.
So the cue is like the trigger that starts the habit.
It's exactly like seeing a notification on your phone.
And the routine is the behavior itself.
Right, like picking up your phone and checking your messages.
And then the reward is that little dopamine hit we get,
That feeling of satisfaction or pleasure
which reinforces the habit.
makes us want to do it again.
And the more we repeat this loop, the stronger that habit becomes.
It becomes automatic
And that's why it can be so hard to break bad habits.
because they're wired into our brains.
And when it comes to changing habits, we might think that focusing on the reward would be effective.
Right, like finding a substitute reward.
But often by the time we experience that reward, the habit loop has already run its course.
And those neural pathways have been strengthened.
So where's the best place to intervene?
Well, the cue and the routine are the key leverage points.
So if we can become aware of the cues that trigger our unwanted habits.
And consciously choose a different routine when those cues arise.
Then we can start to disrupt the old habit loop and create new patterns.
Exactly.
And there was that interesting anecdote we heard about navigating a dessert buffet in Las Vegas.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
By understanding the habit loop associated with sugar cravings and using INNERCISE techniques.
It became possible to resist those urges and make more conscious choices.
That's awesome.
It is.
So what are some practical strategies for forming new positive habits?
Well, start small.
Don't try to do too much at once.
Exactly. Pick one small habit you want to build and focus on that.
And make it as easy as possible to start.
Remove any barriers.
Like if you want to start exercising in the morning, lay out your workout clothes the night before.
Right. Make it a no-brainer.
And focus on consistency rather than intensity.
It's better to do a little bit every day than to try to do a lot all at once and then burn out.
Totally. And consider habit stacking.
Habit stacking. Yeah.
Which is linking a new habit to an existing habit.
Right. So if you already brush your teeth every morning, you could stack flossing on top of that.
Makes sense.
So you're using that existing habit as a trigger for the new habit.
And there's a simple exercise we can do to help build new habits.
Okay, what is it?
So first, identify one small new habit you want to start.
Got it.
Then think about how you can stack it onto an existing habit.
Okay.
And write down one tiny action you can take to make it easier to practice this new habit. And then at the end of each day, write down one sentence about how you successfully practiced your new habit, even if it was just a small step.
I love that. And that daily affirmation will help reinforce the habit.
Yeah, and even if you slip up, don't beat yourself up. Just acknowledge it and get back on track.
Progress, not perfection.
Exactly.
So let's revisit fear for a moment.
Okay, fear.
Because as we discussed earlier, it serves an important purpose.
It's essential for our survival.
Right. It keeps us safe from danger.
But in modern times, our brains can sometimes misinterpret everyday challenges as life or death situations.
Yeah, we can get triggered by things that aren't actually threatening.
Like a deadline at work or disagreement with a loved one.
And our brains go into that fight or flight mode.
Which can be really unhelpful.
Can lead to anxiety, overwhelm, and poor decision making.
So we need to learn to manage our fear response.
Exactly. And there's an INNERCISE for that called I release.
I release. Tell me about it.
So it's a variation of the take 6, calm the circuits technique.
Where you take 6 slow, deep breaths.
Right. And as you're breathing, you consciously check in with yourself about your willingness to release any obstacles that have been holding you back.
Okay, so you're using your breath to calm your nervous system.
And your mind.
And then you're consciously choosing to let go of those fears.
Exactly.
And there's another INNERCISE called beach escape.
Beach escape.
Which is a visualization technique that helps create a sense of calm and safety.
You imagine yourself on a beautiful beach.
The waves are crashing, the sun is shining.
And you feel completely relaxed and at peace.
And these techniques can be really effective in managing those fear responses.
Absolutely.
We heard a personal story about someone who used these techniques to overcome claustrophobia during an MRI.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It shows how powerful these tools can be.
And how we can use them to rewire our brains.
Exactly. So now let's talk about something that a lot of people can relate to.
Money.
Money. Yeah, the financial set point and those limiting beliefs about money.
Oh, this is a big one.
It's fascinating to me that research has shown that after a certain income level, our baseline happiness tends to plateau.
So it's not just about making more money.
It's about our mindset around money.
Exactly, because if we're feeling stuck or limited in our beliefs about money,
It doesn't matter how much money we actually have.
we're still going to feel unhappy,
And there's this concept called the financial set point.
which is thought to be regulated by a part of our brain called the hypothalamus.
The hypothalamus, okay.
And the hypothalamus is kind of like a thermostat for our income,
So it tries to keep our income within a certain range.
whether we consciously want it to or not.
So if our income starts to go above our financial set point,
We might subconsciously sabotage ourselves.
and if it drops below that set point,
We might feel a strong urge to get back to that familiar level,
and this often happens through rationalizations,
telling ourselves stories about why we don't need more money.
or why it's not worth the effort.
Right, things like, I value my free time more than money, or money can't buy happiness.
Which can be true to a certain extent,
Of course.
but they can also be subconscious justifications for staying stuck.
Exactly.
So the key is to align our implicit beliefs about money
Which are those subconscious beliefs?
with our explicit desires for financial well-being.
Right, our conscious goals.
So how can we do that?
Well, one way is to tap into our creative brain.
Our creative brain. Okay.
Because creativity is all about making new connections, seeing things from a different perspective.
And they can help us to challenge our old beliefs about money.
Exactly, and those moments of insight often come when we're in a more relaxed state.
Like when we're daydreaming or meditating.
Right. It's like we're giving our subconscious mind space to work its magic.
And then there's the Back to the Future INNERCISE,
Back to the future.
where
Yeah.
we vividly imagine our future selves as if our goals are already achieved.
And we write about it in detail using present tense affirmations.
So we're literally rewriting our future,
And we're engaging our emotions in that vision.
which helps to make it more real for our brains.
Ex-
And we can also collect evidence to support our new beliefs.
Evidence, yeah.
So we create a belief card with our desired belief written on it.
And then we actively look for and record evidence in our daily lives that supports that belief.
Like little wins and successes,
Right. And every time we find a piece of evidence, we write it down on our belief card.
which helps to strengthen those new neural pathways.
Exactly.
And then there's the process of changing our story,
Changing our story, yeah.
which is about recognizing that we're the authors of our own lives.
We're not just victims of circumstance.
Right. We have the power to rewrite our narratives.
And create new, more empowering stories.
And Dr. David Kruger has developed a 7-step process for doing just that.
Yeah, it's a really powerful framework.
And we heard an inspiring story about Heidi, who was able to overcome significant weight issues and Crohn's disease by retraining her subconscious mind.
Yeah, she used a neurogym program and INNERCISE techniques to change her beliefs and behaviors around food.
And she created incredible transformation in her life.
It's amazing what's possible when we tap into the power of our subconscious.
Absolutely. So now let's talk about stress.
Stress, yeah, everyone's favorite topic.
Well, it's something we all experience.
It's part of life.
But how we manage stress, that's what makes all the difference.
Right, because stress can either overwhelm us or it can fuel our growth.
So think of stress like a giant wave.
Okay.
It has the potential to crash down on us and wipe us out,
Or we can learn to ride that wave
and use it to propel us forward.
like a surfer.
Exactly. And there are two main ways our bodies and minds respond to stress:
What are they?
the threat response and the challenge response.
Okay, so the threat response, that's the one we're probably most familiar with.
It's that fight or flight response.
Right, our heart rate goes up, our breathing becomes shallow, our muscles tense up, we get that tunnel vision.
And it's hard to think clearly.
Exactly.
The challenge response is different.
It's like we're rising to the occasion.
We feel a surge of energy, but it's a calm energy.
Right, and our thinking becomes more focused and creative.
We see possibilities instead of problems.
Exactly. And the fascinating thing is that the same stressor can trigger either response.
It's our interpretation of the stressor that determines how we react.
My mindset.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's an exercise called adult chill-out time.
Adult chill out time sounds nice.
Yeah. It's all about scheduling short breaks throughout the day
Even just a few minutes.
to consciously relax and de-stress.
Take some deep breaths, maybe do some light stretching,
And this can help to interrupt that buildup of the threat response.
and give our nervous system a chance to reset.
But true stress mastery comes from noticing that feeling of stress building in the moment.
And then consciously taking steps to calm ourselves down.
So it's like we're intercepting that stress response before it takes over.
Exactly. And shifting from those fear-dominated areas of our brain to our more rational executive function centers.
Which allows us to make better decisions.
Absolutely.
And there's another interesting exercise called pain go away.
Pain go away. Okay.
So this one starts by focusing on the negative consequences of not making a change,
Really feeling the pain of staying stuck
which can be a powerful motivator.
is.
And then we shift to the take 6, calm the circuits technique.
to regulate our emotions.
And then we visualize positive future outcomes, engaging our emotions in that vision.
And we use a physical anchor, like a gentle tap, to solidify that desired state.
It's like we're programming our brains for success.
Exactly.
And we heard a story about George, who was able to break through an income ceiling in his business.
Yeah, by using a program focused on the mindset of wealth and aligning his subconscious programming with his financial goals.
So it's amazing how much our mindset can influence our results.
It's huge.
Now let's talk more about the negativity bias and the importance of cultivating positivity.
Okay, negativity bias.
Our brains are wired to focus on the negative.
It's that evolutionary survival mechanism we talked about.
Right, because back in the day, it was important to be hyper-aware of potential threats.
But nowadays it can work against us.
Because we're still scanning for danger even when there isn't any.
Right. And we tend to remember negative experiences more vividly than positive ones.
And we're quicker to recognize angry faces than happy faces.
It's like our brains are Velcro for negative experiences and Teflon for positive ones.
Dr. Rick Hansen said that.
He did.
So it's like those negative experiences from our past are always readily accessible.
Like a file cabinet full of bad memories.
And our brains keep referring back to them.
Even if those memories are no longer relevant.
So it's like we need to create new, positive memories.
And strengthen those neural pathways.
And we can do that through conscious effort.
Absolutely.
By focusing on the good things in our lives.
Practicing gratitude.
And cultivating a more optimistic outlook.
It's all about rewiring our brains for positivity.
And there's this concept of automatic negative thoughts, or ANSES.
Right, yes. Yeah.
These are those unhelpful thought patterns that can really bring us down.
Like, I'm not good enough, or I'm gonna fail.
There's an INNERCISE called Kill the NTS.
Kill the NTS. Love it.
It's based on the work of Dr. Daniel Amen.
Yeah, he's a brilliant neuroscientist.
And it involves becoming aware of those negative thoughts, questioning their validity, and replacing them with automatic positive thoughts, or APTS.
APTS, yeah.
So, for example, if you catch yourself thinking, I'm going to fail at this.
You would first question that thought, is it really true? Do you have any evidence to support it?
And then you would talk back to that thought with a more realistic and empowering thought.
Like, I've succeeded at challenging things before, and even if I face setbacks, I can learn from them.
And then you would replace that negative thought with a positive affirmation.
Like, I am capable and I will give this my best effort.
So it's like we're retraining our brains to think more positively.
Exactly.
And there's another strategy called reframe, release, replace.
Reframe, release, replace.
So first we reframe a negative situation by choosing a more empowering perspective.
Like if you get stuck in traffic, instead of getting frustrated, you could reframe it as an opportunity to listen to a podcast or practice some mindfulness.
I like that.
And then we release the emotional intensity of the situation by observing our emotions without judgment and using breathing techniques like Take 6, calm the circuits.
So we're not suppressing our emotions, we're just allowing them to pass through us.
Exactly.
And then we replace those negative thoughts and feelings with positive ones.
With affirmations and visualizations.
And this can be a really effective way to manage negative emotions.
Absolutely.
So let's move on to realizing goals through brain-friendly strategies.
Goals. Okay.
We heard an inspiring story about Caroline Sanderson, who transformed her struggling hair salon into an award-winning success.
Yeah, she used the power of goal setting and visualization.
And a technique called cognitive priming.
Cognitive priming, okay.
So cognitive priming is basically the process of regularly focusing on our goals.
And visualizing them as if they've already been achieved.
Which activates certain areas of our brain.
Like the visual cortex and the prefrontal cortex.
And helps our brains to perceive the goal as more attainable.
It's like we're planting the seeds of success in our minds.
Exactly. And dopamine, that neurotransmitter associated with reward and pleasure, plays a big role in motivation.
Dopamine.
So when we set goals that are meaningful and rewarding,
our brains release dopamine,
which motivates us to take action.
But fear and self-doubt can block that dopamine release.
It's like they put the brakes on our motivation.
Exactly.
That's why it's so important to commit our goals to writing.
Writing them down makes them more real for our brains.
And research has shown that people who write down their goals are significantly more likely to achieve them.
But clarity alone isn't enough.
Right. Our goals also need emotional value.
A strong why behind them.
That's what fuels our motivation and helps us to overcome obstacles.
Exactly.
And for Caroline, her why was her children.
That's a powerful why.
It is.
And it's important to understand the concept of homeostasis.
Homeostasis.
So homeostasis is our brain's tendency to maintain a stable internal state.
So if we set goals that involve significant change,
our brains might resist those changes.
Try to pull us back to our comfort.